Is it really true that a society free from government intervention would be in danger of developing monopolies? Hi guys, Praxgirl here. In our last lesson, we learned how market prices for consumer goods and capital goods are determined through the exchanges by individuals within an economy. We learned that market prices always tend to move towards a final price where supply meets demand, but never actually do. And we learned how these competitive changes influence entrepreneurs to innovate in order to raise their profits. Finally, we learned that past prices are historical data which do not render useful information for the development of praxeological laws. And we showed how drawing graphs or converting the theories of praxeology into math equations is wrong and unscientific. In this lesson, we will address the concept of monopoly and monopoly prices. The concept of monopoly is one of the most popular areas of attack in the analysis of the free market and is often the starting point for the support of government intervention. However, as we'll see, aside from its original historical roots, the definition of monopoly is actually a very flimsy and incoherent one. So to tackle each definition of monopoly, let's first review why competition is favorable. As we have seen in our lessons on the market, competition arises because there are always discrepancies between the price consumers are willing to pay for the product and the price it takes to produce that product. All of this activity means a general improvement in goods and a drop in prices. A drop in prices in the goods consumers desire also means an increase in their productivity, and thus society as a whole has benefited from competition. Competition is clearly a driving force for prosperity in a market economy. Truly knowing the importance of competition, we can address the concept of monopoly. There are at least 3 popular definitions of monopoly, and it's important to understand them because they are used interchangeably in popular language. The most popular definition for monopoly is described as a scenario that occurs when one business comes to dominate and eventually control all of the supply of a particular good or service in an industry. This definition is derived from the word monopoly's linguistic roots, mono meaning one, and poly meaning seller. One supplier of a homogeneous good, therefore only one seller in an industry. The problem with this definition of monopoly is that it's truly arbitrary to define what an industry of a homogeneous good actually is. If action means preferring one good over another, then an outside observer trying to develop laws concerning the market can never be in the position to declare which goods are homogeneous to an individual consumer. Simply observing that 2 goods are physically identical is not sufficient for the qualitative differences shown by the preferences of acting individuals. Here's an example that can illustrate this point. Suppose Jesse is in the market to buy a new iPhone. He is faced with buying the iPhone at 2 different stores. If Jesse ends up paying for the more expensive iPhone, this clearly shows that Jesse differentiates the 2 phones as 2 different goods. As we have seen in past lessons, human action is broader than the limits that can be described by attempts at measurement. There is no measurement in the realm of human action. There is only ranking between the goods consumed and the goods that would have been consumed had conditions been different. It may be that the atmosphere at the store where Jesse bought the iPhone from was more pleasurable, and this factored into his decision. Therefore, if Jesse can distinguish 2 physically identical iPhones as different goods, is it appropriate to call the 2 iPhone stores as separate industries? It is an extraordinarily broad definition. By this definition, every individual product would be a monopoly as long as consumers differentiate between them. And this would, absurdly, make every individual producer and seller a monopolist. John Jones, a lawyer, would have a monopoly on providing legal services as John Jones, the lawyer. And actor Sean Penn would have a monopoly on providing acting services as Sean Penn. With the first definition rendered useless to our study of the market, we can address the second definition, which goes as so. A monopoly occurs when a single business is able to achieve monopoly prices. Monopoly prices, these economists say, is when a seller can increase his profits by restricting his supply and at the same time setting the price of his good above the competitive market price that would occur in perfect competition. To tackle this definition, let's refer again to the concept of prices. In our last lesson, we learned that prices are the outcome of a desire on behalf of actors to satisfy their ends. Therefore, we can say with absolute logical certainty that all goods on a free market which are produced are ultimately produced for consumption. Next, if we reflect on how prices are set, we are reminded that prices are the ratio between the 2 goods individuals choose to exchange. The importance of this is that in no sense could a price on a free market arise that would not be the agreement from both parties. With that said, the question is, could a monopolist set a price on his product as high as he chooses? Obviously no. When the price is set high enough, consumers will start to substitute that good with other goods. For instance, if a producer achieves an exorbitantly high monopoly price in breakfast cereal, then consumers will switch to having eggs for breakfast. Although it may not seem like it to a theorist trying to quantify goods and place them into categories called industries, on the market, no good is free from competition. This is because all producers on a market, regardless of the goods they are selling, are ultimately competing to buy one good: money. If the price of yachts becomes too high, then consumers substitute their money spending on mansions. If the price of televisions becomes too high, then consumers substitute their spending on books. Additionally, we find that as a society's capital accumulation increases, the market is able to provide more goods that can substitute the monopolized good, thereby further restricting a monopolist's ability to hike prices. If a monopolist could set prices as high as he chooses, then the next question should be, what is stopping other entrepreneurs from jumping into the monopolized industry and ending its monopoly and its high profits? Even if a company decides to buy off any new company which arises, this would simply create more entrepreneurial profit opportunities for people to start more businesses. Every new company created simply for the purposes of being acquired by the monopolist would further frustrate the profits of the monopolist. To circumvent this obvious problem, the naysayers ask one more question. But what if a seller undercuts his competition through the process of predatory pricing so that he can avoid having to buy them altogether? In this type of cutthroat competition, a seller chooses to temporarily halt his profits to drive the other businesses into the ground. The obvious first deduction for us should be that this sort of action will always benefit consumers enormously. But the next thing to take away from this is that any seller who can engage in this type of action must already have a superior business model. Therefore, the simple solution to this problem is that when a small business is driven out by a cutthroat competition, it can simply choose to shut down operations and wait until the large firm decides to start charging monopoly prices, and then it opens again. Even if the small seller is driven into bankruptcy, its stock of capital goods will still remain intact, and it can be bought by a new entrepreneur at discounted prices. As a result, the new business will be able to produce goods at much lower costs and will be able to compete more efficiently with the predatory seller. To put it simply, a business may be able to drive their competition out of the market through predatory pricing, but it can only create profit opportunities when it decides to engage in monopoly pricing, thereby inviting new competition back in. The conclusion of this analysis is that there is no such thing as a monopoly price. It cannot be distinguished from a competitive price. Now that we can see that the first definition of monopoly is completely useless to our analysis of the market, and the second definition is all-out incoherent, we can turn to our third definition, the one where the term monopoly came from. Monopoly was originally a legal term stating a granted privilege by a king or state for a certain business to have exclusive rights to sell a certain good. To have monopoly in the original definition meant to have the full force of government protection through violent intervention against other individuals directing their capital and their labor in certain business practices. Obviously, this sort of situation is incompatible with the concept of the free market that we've been analyzing. As we can see, this often touted fear that in an unhampered, completely free market, monopolies would arise is not something to be concerned about. The only reason we have addressed this issue is because of the vast amount of literature written on it. Even today, the fear of monopoly and cartels is very popular. But we must understand that the existence of a market with money already imply that there is catalactic competition. This is because all sellers on a market are ultimately competing to buy money from consumers through the entrepreneurial production of their goods. Whether the goods they sell are homogeneous or not can only be decided by consumers and is not relevant to praxeological theory. We can now see that the fear of monopoly stems from its historical roots in government intervention. The free market has no concept of monopoly prices. Monopoly prices can only exist if there is some sort of coercion involved. I'll see you guys in the next lesson.